Hey, how's it going, everybody, and welcome back into the SFS channel. My name is Gavin, and today I'm going to be giving you all a look at some of my Week 1 running back rankings for 2021 fantasy football. This is a chunk of the overall big board rankings that I will have for every fantasy position for SFS Gold Members, which is a paid service on my website, sizzlefantasy.com, that you can take advantage of for just over $1 a week. You can get all of my exclusive content for this fantasy season. I'll set your lineups, or myself or Eric will help set your lineups for you every week. You'll get exclusive privileges on the SFS community Discord and some other great services on there, so go check that out. But today I've got my top 20 running backs, so just under the RB1s and 2s for 12-team leagues. That would go to RB24, but we're capping things off at RB20 for today's video. If you're new around here, make sure you drop down and subscribe before we get started, and give today's video a like. But let's hit that intro and get right into our players. Alrighty, we're going in reverse order today, so we're starting with our RB20, and we are going to be making our way all the way up to the RB1 position. We'll try and keep things short and efficient, but I also want to give a reasonable forecast for each of these players' games, so we'll talk briefly about each of them as we make our way through today's video. Josh Jacobs is my RB20 for this week against the Baltimore Ravens. If you know me, you know I'm not a big Josh Jacobs guy. I'm not overly high on him this season. But I think that the thing that makes him a nice play for me this week is there's some other running backs that have tougher matchups that helps him creep up my board a bit, in addition to the fact that I think that this particular matchup might play more towards the running attack for this Las Vegas offense. The Raiders have a very young and inexperienced wide receiver core, and they're going up against one of the league's best secondaries in a Week 1 football game. To me, that screams run the football, keep it on the ground, be safe, be conservative with your offensive play calling, and try and figure things out during the game and as you progress through things. But I think at the end of the day, this comes down to I like Josh Jacobs' floor because, again, I think he'll get very good volume this week. The ceiling is going to come down to how many touchdowns does he score. I don't think that the ceiling is all that excellent from pass catching volume or rushing yardage upside. But if he can stumble in the end zone a couple times, he could have a very nice week. But at the end of the day, what you're hoping for here is 20-25 carries between 80 and 100 yards, and maybe he gets a score. So Josh Jacobs at that number 20 spot. At 19, I've got Miles Sanders at the Philadelphia running back at Atlanta here. Miles just has, this is kind of the flip side here. The Eagles have very, very low fantasy floors, I would say, across the board on a week-to-week basis, because it's kind of hard to predict game over game what exactly this offense will look like, because I don't know what it is about the Eagles. They just tend to drop like flies and have injuries just plague their entire roster. But we're heading into Week 1 here, so you've got a healthy offensive line somewhat. You've got Jalen Hurts back there. Miles Sanders is healthy. This is an exploitable matchup. I think Miles is one of the most explosive running backs in the league, and if he's able to get out in space, he can make some big plays happen here and have, again, very nice upside this week. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't say his volume is all that much of a guarantee. So we could see anywhere between 12 and 20 total touches for Sanders this week, depending how much this team can stay in the game. As long as they are at least within a score or two of the Falcons, he should still see utilization throughout the entire game and be in a very active role in this offense. CEH against Cleveland this week. Again, not a player, we're at the bottom parts of this list, so not a player I'm terribly high on this week. But I do think Clyde has very nice floor value here. This should be a dang good game. Tune in to Chiefs-Browns this week if you're able to. I think it'll be one of the best matchups we have here in Week 1. And with that being said, I think Clyde should see some respectable value in the receiving game, because I think this will be a competitive matchup. And although I don't think that anyone's going to get out to too much of a lead here, Clyde should see a fair amount of checkdowns this week. I think that this Browns defense did some things in the offseason to make themselves a very respectable defensive unit. And in turn, I think that Pat Mahomes is going to have to be pretty careful in respect to how he usually plays. So Clyde, not someone I would expect to find the end zone here this week, but he is a player I think has decent value as a PPR play in a quality RB2 in lineups. Gus Edwards. This one is a very, very intriguing volume play here. The Ravens have two active running backs heading into their matchup this week against the Raiders. due to the Justice Hill injury, the J.K. Dobbins injury, they're pretty dang thin here. They just signed Le'Veon Bell to the practice squad, but he's not officially a member of the active roster yet. We'll see whether or not that becomes official prior to game time. But Gus has the opportunity here to see a filthy amount of touches and usage in this offense, and that could potentially turn into some very large output for him. He's probably going to be unquestionably the man on the goal line this week, and against a Raiders front that is not very strong at stopping the run game, Gus could have a lot more upside than I'm even giving him credit for here. So the volume is what I love this week. I think Gus is virtually a must-start in all formats here. He's not going to go out there and catch a bunch of passes, but he is going to pound the rock. Him and Tyson Williams, again, are the only two active running backs on this Ravens roster, heading into Sunday's matchup. So potentially a lot of upside. The floor, I would say, is excellent because of the usage I expect him to have, and you will see Gus in all of my lineups this week. Raheem Mostert, this is a player I am higher than most on here. This comes down to the matchup. At Detroit, you're going to have the opportunity to completely blow the Lions out of the water. I think this is a talent mismatch. The 49ers are clearly the better team here. And if this game gets out of hand, they're just going to run the clock out. And that means more touches, more volume for Raheem Mostert. A player I actually like this week that shouldn't really have any guaranteed value or volume is Trey Sermon, because I think that the 49ers can get up so big this week that your second and third string running backs will be coming in and getting reps here because they're going to be resting their starters at the end of the game. So Raheem Mostert, with the electric running style he has, with the poor defensive front the Lions have, should be in for a big week here, should have the potential and the opportunity to put up some massive numbers for lineups. I would say his ceiling is very high. He's not one of the more safe floor players in fantasy right now, but that ceiling is what we like here. That's the reasoning that we are going out here and putting him up there at that number 16 spot. Austin Ekeler is someone I'm a bit lower on than others here this week against the Washington football team. That's just a tough defense. It's not a matchup I love. I think that although the Chargers did get much better in their offensive line, their front five, this is still the best defensive front in the league, arguably, that they're going up against this week. And I think that might cause some pressure on Justin Herbert, cause him to be running around, be a little bit less comfortable than usual. And there's the case to be made, and I think that where the value has to come from is the passing game and in the checkdown department for Ekeler this week, because I think that in terms of power running against this Washington football team front, Ekeler probably won't be too effective in that area of the field, and I wouldn't expect him to be utilized in the goal line all that much. So Ekeler's value, again, has to come from the receiving game this week. If he's able to make big plays there, maybe he sees a ridiculous amount of targets because Justin Herbert just doesn't have the time to go into a 5-step drop and go through his progressions. Maybe Ekeler gets heavily involved in that phase of the game. But as a pure rusher this week, I'm not a big fan of Austin Ekeler. Chris Carson against the Indianapolis Colts, I think that this isn't a play I'm particularly excited about. But what does make me inclined to think that Seattle might run the ball a bit more than usual is that the Colts secondary is very good at preventing big plays. And that's what Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf make their money centered around. They make plays downfield. And this Colts defense prevents opposing players from doing that on them. So I think they're going to become a little bit more running dependent this week, be a little bit more conservative with their offensive play calling. And although Russ was cooking early on last season, I think Pete Carroll has good intentions to try and prevent that from getting to such an extreme scenario. And Chris Carson, again, if he stays healthy, he's dynamite. He should see a high volume of touches this week. Saquon Barkley, another player I have relatively low here, not even listed as an RB1 in 12-team leagues. He's at the number 13 spot against the Denver Broncos. Look, he's just getting adjusted back to the NFL post that ACL tear, and he's going to have some sort of an adjustment period to get back acclimated to the game, play full speed NFL football, and just develop chemistry with his new offensive line and offense. It's a tough matchup. Denver's defense is no joke. I think Daniel Jones is going to have multiple turnovers in this game, and it might get a little ugly. I've got him in my trade targets video for this week because I think that his value will be trending down after this performance. So go out there, pull the trigger, and make a deal for him. I think that he'll be fine ultimately after this, and as long as he stays healthy, I have no concerns for him this season outside of shaky offensive line play. But at the end of the day, against a tough matchup, his first game back, maybe he doesn't see a full slate of volume. I've got him down my board just a hair here. Najee Harris in his first game against the Buffalo Bills. Not a matchup I'm extremely excited about, but also not one that really scares me off of him too much. He's going to be a 3-down player, a workhorse running back. He's going to get his touches, his opportunities in all areas of the field. There's nothing really exploitable about this defense to me, but it's also not an elite enough of a run stop where I feel very concerned about this matchup. I simply like Najee Harris's usage, and although it's his first game, I think he can come out here, be a productive player for us in a low-end RB1 this week. Ezekiel Elliott, I'm a bit lower on than I'd like to be this week, but Tampa Bay's defensive front is as elite as it gets in the NFL. And I think that the Buccaneers are just, I don't think they're going to blow the Cowboys out. I think that's a bit of an extreme thing to predict at this point in time. But I definitely think they're going to be controlling this game late, and the Cowboys' hand will be tipped, and they'll have to be passing the ball rather than running the ball and having a balanced attack down the stretch of that football game. So I think that the efficiency for Zeke is going to be rather underwhelming this week. You're going to be crossing your fingers that he scores touchdowns and has red zone production for you. That's where his value will come from this week. The ceiling is very low, and I would say the floor is a bit shaky as well. This could be one of his worst performances of the season because, again, it is a terrifying defensive front to play. That front seven, when you look at those linebackers and the speed that they fly around the ball with. He's also without Zach Martin, his arguably top offensive lineman who was lost to COVID. There's just a lot of things I don't like in this matchup. So the volume will certainly be there for the first 3 quarters of the game. The talent is there, but the matchup, your top offensive lineman arguably going down a little bit too much for me, so he slides down into that low-end RB1 territory. James Robinson, someone I have actually higher than a lot of others. I love the matchup this week. Houston is not a solid defense. This is probably going to be a sloppy football game. This is probably the 2 worst teams in the league duking it out here in week 1. But James Robinson can be used as a 3-down back. We saw that last season. And I think he should just be utilized in all areas of the field. He'll catch passes. He'll run the ball. He'll probably be the utilized back on the goal line, although Carlos Hyde could steal some value there. I just like the fantasy forecast here. I think the floor is very, very high. And in this type of a matchup where I think that in Trevor Lawrence's first game, he's going to throw a lot of passes, but I also think Urban Meyer will be safe, protect him, run the ball, try and keep this a steady, balanced attack. I just like the overall situation in this matchup here. James Robinson, again, at my RB10 spot. At number 9, Antonio Gibson playing the Chargers this week. I just love his dynamic ability. I think that the Chargers are a respectable defense, but I don't think it's anything to be too afraid of here. Gibson's going to be used as a pass catcher, the goal line back most likely, even though he's not too much of a brute force physical player. And he's going to catch passes. So I get everything I want out of a fantasy football running back in a matchup that isn't terrible this week. I'll take that every time. Antonio Gibson as my RB9 here. Joe Mixon, another player I'm quite high on this week who I don't normally love. The Vikings, they did get better. They get their best defensive player, Danielle Hunter, back on the field this season. They are playing a poor offensive line in Cincinnati. But I think Joe's going to see so much volume here as they transition Burrow back onto the field. I think they're going to try and protect him, make him comfortable in that offense, and give him the best situation to succeed, as opposed to throw him out there to the Wolves and toss him right into the fuming fire that is the Cincinnati Bengals offensive line. So I expect a high volume of touches for Joe Mixon here in week 1. He should come out here, put up pretty productive numbers, and be a very safe floor play with a pretty dang good ceiling as well, because if he can cash in a few of those touches, he'll be a very valuable asset for us this season. Aaron Jones against the New Orleans Saints here. This is a player I expected to have a little bit lower on the list this week, but due to the fact that the Saints had to give up so much talent on the interior of their defensive line, in addition to the fact that they are dealing with suspensions up there, there's opportunity for the Packers front to be more effective than they normally would have been against one of the league's best run stops over the past 4 or 5 seasons. So Jones, I also think, will be heavily involved in the receiving game this week. No Jamal Williams in town. A.J. Dillon has been impressive in the preseason as a pass catcher, but I still think the majority of that work belongs to Jones here. He should put up nice numbers across the board, be used in a high dosages here, and as the Packers look to transition this offense into being without their starting left tackle, that might actually mean more rushing attempts, because you might not want to drop back and let Cam Jordan rush a second-string left tackle and create more opportunities for disaster for Aaron Rodgers without his best pass protector on the field. So Aaron Jones, RB7. At number 6, I've got Nick Chubb. I think that, the Browns are going to try and control the tempo of this game. They're not going to let the Chiefs turn this into a track meet. They're going to play controlled offense and try and maintain possession of the football. That means a lot of opportunities for Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt here. Chubb might just be the safest week-to-week floor player in the NFL because of how pure of a rusher he is and just how effective he is with his touches. He's very efficient. He averaged a 20-plus yard carry per game last season, and although he's not too much of a pass catcher and really isn't used at all in that area of the game, he's so good as an NFL running back that the value he gives us here, the production, the efficiency, the turnover we get from the volume he's given is so great that, again, the Chiefs probably regressed defensively from the team they had last season. You talk about losing Frank Clark. That's a big deal to some off-the-field issues. I think Chubb comes in here, has a big day, and the Browns will at least give their best shot towards maintaining possession of that football and running it in high dosages here week 1. Jonathan Taylor as my RB5 against Seattle this week. Nothing terribly advantageous about this matchup, aside from the fact that I think that the Colts are going to be running in heavy dosages due to the fact that Carson Wentz is playing his first game as a Colt, and they're probably going to try and protect him and have as favorable as a game script as possible, because when you're playing a quarterback the caliber of Russell Wilson, you can't afford to have sloppy turnovers. You can't afford to give up freebies to the other team. They're going to keep this ball on the ground. It's a home game, and I think that they're going to use their strengths, that being this offensive line and the run game here, and Jonathan Taylor should be in for a large day of work. JT can do it all. We saw that last season. I think he doesn't get enough credit for what he does as a pass catcher. I would say him and Nick Chubb are very comparable players, with the exception that JT can do some big damage in the screen game, and when he gets out in space, he has some great top-end speed. So the Seahawks, not a front I'm afraid of at all this week, and I think that if he gets the volume I expect him to have, JT should have a big day, pop some big carries, and turn over some really nice fantasy numbers for us. Derrick Henry against the Cardinals, no reason not to like this matchup. The Cardinals' front did get much better this season. They added J.J. Watt. They've already got Chandler Jones, but it's much more of a pass-rushing team than it is a run-stopping team. Even though the Titans had their little bout with COVID, they lost a bunch of players, including Ryan Tannehill and their head coach Mike Vrabel for a handful of days. They're going to be just fine. They're going to play smash-mouth football. They are, plain and simple, a tougher team than the Cardinals are. And Derrick Henry is just going to walk out there and get his numbers. There's nothing to me that is a red flag that screams issues for Derrick Henry this week. He's going to go out there, get his typical 20, 25, heck, who knows, maybe even 30 rushing attempts. I expect nice days from A.J. Brown and Julio Jones as well this week. The Titans should have a very, very solid overall offensive performance. Dalvin Cook is my RB3 against Cincinnati. Cook was one of the best volume running backs in the league last year, and just in terms of how many touches he had on a per-game basis, he was over 25. He had multiple 30-touch games. The Bengals are another team I'm not afraid of this week. Dalvin's got excellent upside in each and every week. He can score touchdowns, be used in the receiving game, and just be used as a workhorse running back. No reasons not to like Dalvin Cook. He's going to go out there, get his numbers, do his thing like he always does. Christian McCaffrey against the Jets, making his strong return here hopefully this season. I'd love to see him stay healthy. I hope that he doesn't deal with the injuries and get banged up like he did last year. They were using him in such high dosages that he was just wearing down and his body wasn't able to keep up with the physicality. But he'll be elite. He's the best running back in fantasy when he's out there and on the field. But there is one player's matchup who I love so much that I had to move him down the list just one spot. The Jets, though, they are coached by a defensive head coach, Robert Saleh. They aren't an elite defense at this point in time. They don't have elite personnel, but that's, at the end of the day, is what it came down to for me between this number 2 and number 1 spot was the matchup favorability that I like here. And that's why Alvin Kamara is my running back 1 for this week. Coming from a Green Bay Packer fan, our run stop is pathetic. We play 3 up defensive linemen, and 2 of them are usually outside linebackers who are pass rush specialists. Kenny Clark, if you're familiar with defensive players, is our true nose tackle, and he is our only run-fitting defensive lineman that we play. Alvin Kamara played the Packers last year, and he absolutely torched us and ate us alive. This is what he does. This is also the first game with a new quarterback. They are going to be leaning on Alvin Kamara. their star running back more so than they may have normally had to. Everything to me screams massive volume for Alvin Kamara this week, probably 20 plus touches. I think that he's going to dominate the goal line work. They just cut Latavius Murray, who was honestly a threat to his touchdown upside last season because of his capabilities to produce in that area of the field. And now you give me this great matchup where the Packers' last concern seems to be stopping the run on a play-to-play basis. They are always looking to get sacks and create turnovers. But stopping the run has never been something in the last 2 seasons with this revamped defensive unit that they've had that has been a priority or a strength for them, to say the least. So I think that this is very exploitable, whether he's used as a receiver or a running back. Kamara's going to put up great numbers. He's going to be extremely efficient this week. I wouldn't say it's too far to go to expect multiple touchdowns from him. The Saints are, without Michael Thomas, their top receiver. The Packers have an elite shutdown corner on the other side of the ball. That means to me, pick your poison. Traquan Smith or Marquez Callaway, they can just take that person out of the game. It's going to be a very, very heavy dose of Alvin Kamara this week. He's going to be very good with those touches. He's going to put up massive numbers. That's why he is my running back 1 for week 1. Alrighty, those were my top 20 running backs for week 1 of 2021 fantasy football. Again, if you want access to the rest of this rankings list and all of my other positional rankings, those will be posted live and ready to go for you all to use as a tool for your lineups before the Thursday night games. So my goal is to have those completed and done. I just need to enter them into the site at this point in time. But those rankings will be published and live hopefully by lunchtime on Thursdays every single week so that you can take advantage of those lists for obviously Thursday night football and then heading into those Sunday and Monday night matchups. But again, SFS Gold, the link to that is in the description of today's video, or you can see it up on your screen, or you could, I guess, just 30 seconds ago. So go check that out if you're interested in that. It's only just over $1 a week to get all that exclusive content, me setting your lineups or Eric setting your lineups, exclusive privileges in that community Discord. There's a bunch of stuff you can take advantage of for that very good value. So thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you guys tomorrow for some wide receiver rankings. So stay tuned for that. Turn the bell on, and I'll see you guys there. Peace out.